The sound of glass shattering echoed in her ears. She gasped, feeling the cold weight of betrayal wash over her yet again. A single moment, a blade through her chest, her husband's face void of emotion, marked the end of her life for the 6th time. But just as darkness closed in, the world spun violently and she awoke once more in the very beginning. Her engagement banquet, the hum of polite conversation, and her fiancé's sharp glare felt like a cruel joke from fate. She had failed 6 times to escape this cursed destiny. Would this 7th time be any different? The room was alive with chatter, filled with nobles whose smiles were as false as the jewels they wore. She forced a polite smile, her mind racing. In her past loops, this was the moment her life started to unravel, a tangled web of deceit and schemes that always led to her downfall. Her fiancé, a man she knew would one day betray her, stood at her side. His piercing gaze was calculating, as though he was already plotting her demise. She had once thought she could change him, that perhaps her love would soften his heart. But she had learned the hard way, love was not enough. While living with him, this time, she vowed, would be different. Deciding to rewrite her fate, she approached the one person she had avoided in all her past lives, the infamous war hero, feared for his ruthlessness. His crimson eyes glinted like molten fire, and his reputation for cruelty was known across the land. Yet he was also the one man who had no hand in her previous deaths. If she was to escape her fate, she needed an ally, no matter how dangerous he seemed. "What do you want with me?" he asked, his voice low and menacing. She met his gaze, unflinching. "Because our goals align. You desire power, and I desire survival." For the first time, she saw a flicker of curiosity in his expression. Was this the glimmer of hope she had been waiting for? Days turned into weeks, and their uneasy alliance began to grow. Together they unraveled secrets that had eluded her in previous loops. Hidden behind the masks of her smiling enemies were plots far darker than she had imagined. In making an alternate reality, Solo learned more about his present place in the world. But as they worked together, something unexpected began to happen. Beneath his icy exterior, she glimpsed a man who carried his own burdens, his own regrets. She couldn't help but wonder, was he truly the monster everyone believed him to be? The question lingered in her mind, even as she struggled to keep her heart from softening. Could she afford to trust him? Late one night, as they pored over old letters and secret documents, she stumbled upon a chilling truth. Her death in every loop wasn't just a series of accidents or betrayals. It was orchestrated. Someone had been pulling the strings all along, ensuring her demise in every timeline. Her hands trembled as she read the words over and over, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. But who could wield such power? And more importantly, why were they so determined to see her dead? She looked up at her unlikely ally, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've been watching us all this time." His gaze hardened. "Then we'll make them regret it." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she began to see a glimmer of hope. Their plan was risky, but if they could outwit the mastermind behind her endless deaths, she might finally be free. She couldn't ignore the way her heart raced every time her ally smiled, a rare, fleeting expression that made him seem almost human. But she couldn't afford distractions, not now, when everything was at stake. Yet, in quiet moments, she couldn't help but wonder, if she survived this time, would she allow herself the chance to truly live? Their carefully laid plans began to crumble when a trusted confidant revealed their betrayal. She barely escaped with her life, her ally dragging her to safety through hidden passageways. "You were too trusting," he snapped, his voice sharp with frustration. "And you were too cold," she shot back, her anger boiling over. "You push everyone away. How can you expect loyalty when you refuse to show it yourself?" The tension between them crackled like fire, but neither could deny the truth in the other's words. In that moment, they realized their survival depended on more than just strategy. It required trust. Cornered and out of options, they devised one final plan, a desperate gamble that would either end the cycle or destroy them both. She would confront the mastermind directly, while her ally created a diversion. "No." As they prepared for the mission, he handed her a blade. "In case I'm not there to protect you." Her heart twisted at the thought of losing him, but she pushed it aside. "You'll be there," she said firmly, as much to convince herself as him. The mastermind was more cunning than she had imagined. As she stood face to face with the person who had orchestrated her endless suffering, she realized how deeply their hatred ran. "You were never meant to survive," the mastermind sneered. "Your very existence is an insult to the balance of this world." But she was no longer the naive girl who had fallen victim to their schemes. With every loop, she had grown stronger, more determined. "This ends now," she declared, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. The battle that followed was chaotic and brutal. Just as she thought victory was within reach, the mastermind revealed a shocking twist, a secret that shattered everything she thought she knew. The answer would change everything.